Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. GMT, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make money on the internet. I'm your host, B-Check. We are live on X. We are live on YouTube. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Legendary. And today we have a special guest for us, our routine speaker, but up with us on video for the first time, Jack GK, crypto and NFT exit liquidity, always finding ways to add value through content, asking the stupid questions in spaces so you don't have to. Looking forward to a number of those and maybe some intelligent ones too. Cannot wait to get into it in just a moment with all of you. But just before we do that, a reminder, friends, that nothing that we say here is financial advice. This modern market is exceptionally risky. We do not know anything for sure. So please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary first, how are you doing this Friday, the 19th of January?
GM, what a savage intro for Jack. Absolutely loved it. Doing
It's his
good.
bio. It's his bio.
Yeah, but just the way you read it out
I see.
makes it more special. Makes it more special. Doing good. Had a lovely workout in the morning. The only thing that did upset me is that your real life penguin talk and how to purchase actual penguins in the real world kind of marked the local pudgy top yesterday. I think that did cause a sell-off in the market.
Yeah, it could be. It could also have been the tweet where I said, send the penguins to 20 with haste, because there are no collections that exist between 10 and 20. And then it swiftly moved the collection away from 20. So I take some responsibility there. Let's not say those types of things again. Jack, welcome to the stage and video with us today for the first time. How are you doing? How are you feeling as we draw towards this close of the week on a red day in crypto and NFTs?
Look, it was bound to happen, wasn't it? You put me on video, and that is always going to be a down day for crypto. Like, this is what it is. I don't expect to be invited back, but what can you do? You do your best in this space to try and make some sort of reputation for yourself. But as you've already described on the show, I am the exit liquidity, and we are seeing a down day in the market.
There we go. Love to hear that. I think that's nice contrition, to be honest. You sound very, it's like, not debating it. It's a bad day across the market. Any particular stupid questions that you might be looking to ask today? What's your stance with the stupid questions? Do you just let them come organically? Do you plan them in advance? What's your kind of question formulating process?
Yeah, organically stupid would probably be my best way to describe my formula. Essentially, my brain just tickers away in ADD mode, and then I don't have any ability to think before I speak, and that normally correlates to just dumbass questions. And what I like to think is that I am just a normal person, and therefore will have very normal questions. And the best thing about being a basic bitch is actually the fact that most people are basic, and therefore if you ask those stupid questions, other people generally will have those questions too. And by me asking those stupid questions, I hope to answer some other people in the audience's questions as well, who may not get an opportunity to ask them because they're just a little bit more smart than me to at least not go up on stage and ask those stupid questions.
Love it. That actually makes a lot of sense. So you're actually providing a very important public service in the questions that you ask. Look, we're delighted to have you. And just for the people who are like unclear, I've noticed some things in the period of time that I've been online the last few years. When British people say like self-deprecating things, it's funny. Like Americans, I don't know if that humor necessarily translates across. I'd love to know in the comments from our American listeners, like, is that a common thing? We do this all the time where we just say that we're dumb and we're like, not playing ourselves down a little bit. I don't know if that's also a European thing. Would love to know if that like actually translates, that type of humor. I know it does for us. Legendary, in your European region, Where are you on the scale of self-deprecating humor?
And we don't really do that. We just complain, but we don't direct deprecating comments to ourselves. But we love to complain about everything all the time.
I do think there's a lot of humor in complaining. Being happy is not funny at all. There's nothing funny about being happy. And perfect segue into not being happy. Let's get into the NFT market news and the crypto news from the last 24 hours, because things are not looking that great today, but I don't know how much we need to despair. Let's get into it. As always, this information is coming to you from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. If you do find that it brings you some value today, please do give it a like. So let's get into it, starting with the price action. We've got crypto down. We've got Bitcoin down a few percent at 41.3K, ETH down a couple of percent at 2.5, Solana down 6% at $95, Ape down 6% at 1.4. NFT volume, ETH is at 18.9 million, Solana at 8.5, Bitcoin at 8.1. Getting into the headlines, Bitcoin, ETH, and Sol all down, and a red day for NFTs too. For example, Penguins are down 8%, Azuki are down 4%, Bored Apes are down 5%, but it's really red across the board. We'll get into a few more collections in just a moment as well. Number two, Bitcoin ninjas sell out at 0.03 BTC mint price. Some context from Tyler: the pizza ninjas have completed their mint and opened up at 0.1 Bitcoin and rising. That was last night. We'll check on the price in a moment. That's a solid 3x for minters who paid 0.03. Top sale was 0.4 Bitcoin for a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle trait. So that is a very successful mint. Obviously, ordinals still continuing to be successful. And finally, Crypto Undead's reveal and price crashes 30% to 7 Sol on mixed reviews. We've got a lot of knowledge on stage today about some of the details and the artists potentially behind that project. So we want to dive into that in just a little bit. Getting into the price action for NFTs, CryptoPunks are flat at 58.2, Bored Apes down 5%, Mutants down 1%, DGods at 3.2, holding steady, Captains at 4.7, Azuki's down 4% at 7.1, Penguins down 8% at 17.5 now, Moonbirds at 1.1 down 7%, Noun's winning bid today was at 8.1 ETH. Couple of notable sales. There were 3 Pudgy Penguin golds selling for 50 ETH each yesterday. That's $124,000. Legendary, that is the price action. Those are the headlines. Any numbers jumping out to you there first?
Yeah, you say the NFT market is having a red day, but there's someone standing out and having a very, very green day, being up more than 17% on the day, and it is the Creeps. The Creeps community is up, floor at 2.75 ETH. We saw massive sweeps happening yesterday, so they are certainly enjoying their day. Other than that, I'm not too worried about that correction in the market that we're seeing. Definitely the Pudgy Penguin, the golden sales. I think it was a total of 3 that we've seen moving over the last days. And wasn't it the same wallet that bought all of them? Or was
Yes, same person.
Same person who bought them, right? So that was definitely an outstanding purchase, which I think might age pretty well.
Interesting stuff. Jack, what do you think about those particular purchases? Any thoughts on Creeps and why that might be moving? Any thoughts on the rarity buys on Pudgies? Obviously, one of the key indications for projects being like more successful is that people are willing to go above the floor and buy either mid rares or very rares. What are your thoughts on that triple buy?
Bring rares back is my main thoughts on this. Is I am so bored with just every trait being a floor trait. This does not mean that if you have the one NFT with a single earring and also a hat and also a different background, that is going to go up in value. It has to be aesthetically pleasing. But if that is the case, like these gold pudgies, then I am all for it. I think what Azuki did with their rarity, with the token like correlation with rarity, was very, very good. I generally miss being able to say, look, if we are going down digital collectibles, then there has to be an element where rarity becomes part of the discussion again. And if that isn't going to be the case, then I think we've already heard this argument plenty of times, but then they are just shit coins. If every single one of them is the same, then they're shit coins. So I love getting back to rarity. I think that's definitely a good move. On the creep side, I have no idea. I didn't notice that green uptick. I assume it's something around the token, but I haven't seen anything on the timeline to suggest that the token is inbound. Maybe there was some sort of commentary on it, but I haven't seen anything.
Interesting points. I can only assume similarly that something about the token for creeps. Portal coin, I believe, is coming out at some point, either later this month or early next month. I'm not 100% sure. But good points on rarity. I was thinking about this. I was listening to Spencer on the morning show yesterday, and he was kind of talking about how it wasn't necessarily clear after NFTs went through their first cycle if they were going to come back in the way that they did last time. And so I think what's happening here is that pudgies are kind of breaking out in a much bigger way than anything else, instigating or like showing people that yes, people are willing to go for a second cycle in NFTs. Legendary, do you have any thoughts on that type of thinking? Like, do you think this pudgy thing needed to happen for people? Is that going to give people confidence to get back into the rest of things?
I think it's a strong sign, because typically buying above the floor doesn't really make any sense unless you want something for aesthetical value, but it's never really been financially the smartest thing to do in most cases, at least. If you set aside the craze from the last bull market, where I was able to fetch a premium for one of my Bored Apes, for example, because it was a double merch shirt plus hat. But apart from that, we went to everything as a floor, unless there's a reason for it not to be a floor. And I feel like Azuki has done a very good job on that with their collector status, which we've spoken about. And that was also interesting in terms of a takeaway from the spaces that I hosted on Tuesday, where I had them from the team on from Azuki. And he said that they looked at market data and how certain trades were trading and were in demand when they came out with the formula as to how many points each of those trades is supposed to have for the collector status. So it is interesting because it kind of connects to the conversation that we had yesterday, where apes and mutants did the same thing for the token airdrop, right? Looking at the ratio and then doing the airdrop according to the ratio at mutants and apes were trading at. So it's also good to then see teams reacting to how the market is trading their collection, and someone putting in the confidence and not just sweeping a bunch of floor pudgies, but actually going for 3 gold ones is certainly a strong sign, or like positive, very positive signaling.
Yes, I think that's definitely the case. Jack, what do you think about this cycle idea about like we needed to see something enter into another cycle before the rest of NFTs can kick into the second cycle? Do you think that's what's happening now? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's always been the big concern with NFTs. Like, it hadn't really seen a cycle. So it was very much like, is this going to zero or will it see a cycle? And if you look at crypto, and I think actually, again, like Spencer mentioned this on the Nifty the other day, like crypto, it wasn't until it became cyclical that you really see those huge gains. And it normally, once it's, it's positioned as a cycle as opposed to just a pump and dump, then that's where you see the major leaps from all-time high perspective. Is like, okay, people have history to refer to now, and they can start making bets based on that history, as opposed to previously just degenerate gamble, like let's just go all in on apes. Apes made it because they were the best project at the time, had a decent founder group, but that was all there really was to it. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this. I do think, whether we see all-time highs that, did what crypto did, which was like a 10x on previous all-time highs, once you got those real clear cyclical signs that, this wasn't just a single pump, but actually there's history here. This is going to happen again and again and again. And, Bitcoin being the best example now because of the history that it has. Every time, except for I think one single occasion, it always sees new time highs, but the big one was the second, like the one which like determined it as a cycle. So yeah, I'm really interested in that. I think, look, that Pudgies, they were near 20 ETH. And to hit a gold at 50, when you look at Bored Ape again and look what those golds were going for in terms of the premium, that is like an easy bet if you believe that this is the start of the next cycle. And that's how I've been thinking for a while now. When I talked about Bodoggo's, very similar sort of thesis there is like what happened in the previous cycle. You look at Cool Cats, you look at those IP plays that were just under those like significant blue chips at the 40 ETH range, and that's where I sat them. And like the bets that I made were based off the previous cycle and just saying, okay, who are the blue chips in this new cycle? Where am I going to put my money this time round?
Yeah, it's a good way to think about it. One of the things that I thought was a really interesting way to look at it, we have spoken about it on the show before, but I wanted to articulate it again because I think with so many projects looking towards tokenization, and by that I mean ERC20 tokenization. So obviously they're already tokenized in the sense that the NFT is a token. But with so many projects looking to the more liquid coin market as a way to generate more value for themselves and their communities, I think it's important to talk about market caps and valuations. One of the big things that we do not do for some reason in the NFT space is we do not mark these NFT projects by FTV. We, instead of multiplying their floor price by the amount of supply and figuring out what the total value of the collection is, we are stuck on floor price for some reason. Like, it really makes completely no sense to do this. Because I know a lot of smart people, what they do will, especially now that people look towards the coin market, is that they'll say, well, look, this is the market cap or the FTV of this NFT collection. That is just multiples off what a reasonable FTV might trade at for this collection if it was a liquid token in the coin market. And so by doing that comparison, people are thinking, well, this is a buy. This is a buy at this price in terms of the NFT, because if as soon as we get an allocation in proportion to our holdings in the coin market, we're going to be so much better off because there's just instantly created loads more value in the coin market. Legendary, we've spoken about that idea before. Is this something that you're taking even more seriously now? How do you feel about it?
I think per se it is, my opinion stands that I agree with you. I think that if this is a narrative that will be shared more often on the timeline and more people will like support that, then I think it will also, I mean, it's pretty obvious as a conclusion, will be a more popular way to look at things. It kind of reminds me of the Solana story that we talked about when Solana was on a massive run and everyone's narrative was like, well, look at the relative low compared how far it is away from its all-time high. When you look at Solana, it's a 8x, 9x, whatever, and it's only a 3x for ETH, so it is undervalued. And that then became a story, and it got legs and did run on that. And if this narrative becomes more popular and it makes sense in essence, like I like that narrative more than relatively undervalued by comparing all-time highs makes more sense to me, then I could see more trading happening based on that as well.
Interesting stuff. I think that all makes sense. Quick shout out to Roman in the comments to addressing that first question we asked. Do the Americans get the sarcasm? No, sarcasm has no place in 21st century America. That is damning assessment of the comedic landscape. But I think there's some sarcasm. Maybe not as dark as ours though, across the pond. Jack, going straight to you. I know you wanted to come in again on this idea of the valuations and how you would compare them with market caps.
Yeah, I think for me, now that the SEC, now that the ETFs have gone, or at least the Bitcoin ETF, the other thing that signals to me is that there is more acceptance more generally around tokens, the whole thing. And I know Bored Ape Yacht Club are still, under sort of review with the SEC. But if you look at the last run, the way that run worked, because I was asked this question specifically, I was actually called stupid for holding my moonbird to, you know, plus 100k. I'm all about stupid, so it didn't offend me in the slightest. But it was the question, or the assumption was that you just had to be high, like you just had to be in some sort of world that is completely not connected with reality to have held these crypto, you know, the 40 ETH Azukis, Moonbirds, Doodles, when like it obviously was just all going to go to zero. And I think the actual reality was, at the time, the SEC hadn't come calling, and that token, we had seen a play with Bored Ape Yacht Club. We had seen what that was going to do, and it made more sense to hold the underlying token. And now that we're seeing the clarity come in with the ETF, I think, you know, you've said it a bunch of times, B, on the stage, which is that it just feels like at a certain point, when these NFTs get to a big enough reputation, they will drop a token, and that is going to be very valuable for the holders. I do think now it just makes more and more sense to me that NFT projects that launch tokens are going to be so much more successful than just meme coin tokens. And you've seen it through Bonk, like reaching out to all of these NFT projects, but we haven't really seen a new NFT run. Yeah, Memeland is probably the best example we have so far. It didn't dump to the levels that people said it would, and either did the NFT project. But as that expands out with the ETF, as regulation comes in, as more clarity comes in, it just makes so much sense to me that these tokens and like whatever else we do in this space, it's going to be a lot more effective with the community that you have around NFTs that you just don't get through meme coins.
Yeah, it's good that you brought up the Memeland one, because the reason why that's so important is because no matter how much that was, I don't know what it was, like 7, 8 ETH, maybe pre airdrop of meme, and like now, even now at 5 ETH of meme, like if you were to multiply that by the number in there, like you get nowhere near 2 billion. Like there's 2 billion of value that's just been created. And so, and not only has 2 billion been created for the FDV of meme coin, the tokens themselves, it's not like they've gone to zero as a consequence of all of that value being created. So you're right. In this second cycle, in the first cycle, we didn't know what we were doing, and NFTs were going up and down based on, I don't know. Well, we ultimately didn't know, right? Some of the stuff was purely provenance. Some of it was, okay, could there be a token? Maybe this second cycle is going to be far more focused on solidifying your community, making sure you've got quality product so that you can tokenize in a appropriate way. Legendary, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense from that perspective. Also, that you started, or let's put it like this: many PFP projects, NFT projects started like with obviously a dream, a branding playbook, whatever. And now the successful ones are not only solidifying the community, but also solidifying the underlying business model, which then gives them kind of a fundamental value. Like if you look at something like the plague, which we discussed on the show, where at the end of the day, it also represents an equity stake in the company, which is not tied to the NFT anymore. There was a snapshot, so it's not like it's transferable for legal reasons, but the idea was kind of clear to give them a sort of fundamental value. With Pudgies, you can make the argument there is a toy business, and you at least own the digital IP that might be used in that business. So it's not only solidifying the community, but also like the underlying business models.
Yeah, interesting stuff. There's clearly a move towards solidifying your core, solidifying your product, and move towards tokenization. I think that seems to be the popular narrative at a minimum. And even for people who are not doing that on the gaming side, for example, Legendary, I know you're much closer to that. It's just like, let's get a game out, let's get a token out, and let's get that stuff moving. So interesting development if you think about it in terms of cycles, where we were in cycle 1 and what really the outlook is, with all the reason for things to move up in cycle 2. Interesting stuff there. I think that's really helpful conversation. Let's get into, I mean, the title of the show is NFTs Red Everywhere. We can see Pudgy Penguin's down, Little Pudgy's down, Milady's down, Azuki's down, all a significant amount. Crypto's down at the same time. Jack, any thoughts on, what's going on here?
Yeah, I think we were just euphoric, weren't we? Bitcoin was up, crypto was up generally, NFTs for some reason match that, although it makes no sense. But there we go. That's definitely historically proven at this point. I do think a little bit of the Undead's launch might have hit people in the wrong way. It did what NFT projects have been doing even in the bear, which is it had the cost at like 20 sol pre-reveal, like pre-release, pre-mint, and then it's halved and now it's halved again. I think people have seen that and went, oh, okay, maybe this isn't quite the start of the bull that we expected. We wanted to see that thing run. We wanted to see a project just come out of the gate and just immediately run to definitely see that. I think with Pudgies as well, missing the mark to flip Bored Apes, I think that is a narrative, but in reality, it costs a lot of money to do that. There was like a significant amount of funding that would need to go into Pudgy's flipping Bored Ape Yacht Club. And when it didn't hit that, and it was clear that that like uptick started to taper off, I think people got a little nervous, because I think that was honestly the play that most people had was, I'm just going to buy this thing to flip apes. And then I think a certain subset of those traders, not the holders, essentially wanted to flip it. And when they seen that that didn't happen, they got nervous and they sold, and that had a knock-on impact, because that is now one of the biggest narratives in the space across the whole space.
Interesting point. Legendary, do you think a lot of the market is somehow connected to Pudgies now? Like, if Pudgies, is it almost like the trading pair of everything else is in some way connected to Pudgies, in the sense that, like, look, if Pudgies are going to go up 15%, everything else can like just edge up as well? Is that giving the market confidence? And conversely, when it goes down, do people want to sell off?
I would say yes, in absence of any like market moving news. Like if Pudgy announced a token today, and then they run, I don't think that the rest of the market runs. If Pudgies fuck up massively and crash, I don't think the rest of the market crashes. But if they're just having a run because people are sweeping, or someone is dumping them massively and causes a decrease in the floor price, I do think that there is a bit of a network effect, of a ripple effect into the rest of the market, because Pudgies are running up, you can't afford a Pudgy. Oh, Azukis are looking good, maybe buy an Azuki. Similar concept of the relative lows and those similar collections moving together to some extent. What I also think is that it's not really something that worries me. I like to put things into perspective on a more like medium term horizon. And if you look at the trading volume for Pudgies for the last day, that's 2.3k ETH. That's like more than 5 mil. Azuki, 2k ETH. That's 5 mil, almost 5 mil. And if you put that in perspective with our shows that we've been doing last summer, where we're like, NFT volume for the day is $3.2 million across the board. And now we have two collections that do more on their own on a day than the entire market did a couple months ago. That for me puts things into perspective and makes me not worry about a correction like that.
That's such a good perspective. Like, yeah, there were those days where we were reporting OpenSea like 2 million, Blur 4 million. And as you say, collections are just are moving very, very quickly. I think can you hear me okay? My video was cutting out.
Yeah, you did cut out for a second or so.
Okay. Shout out to Hamza in the comments. One of the main reasons meme coin is holding its value is the coin is vesting for holders, unlike ApeCoin, who didn't get all their coins straight away to dump. I mean, I think tokenomics is really, really important. It does. I don't think it plays a part in the immediate valuations of NFTs, because lots of the time people don't like dig into the tokenomics. But if you want to determine value once that token is out in the market and try to predict how it might move, yes, it's very, very important to determine those vesting schedules and be aware of who is vesting when, because not every single party is vesting on the same schedule. So that is a very important point to make. That's enough on the NFT market. Legendary, I know we wanted to talk about the crypto market just a little bit. We had this really big news yesterday. Why don't you set it up while I change the title of the spaces? about Bitcoin surpassing silver to claim the second spot in US commodities with nearly 30 billion in assets under management. Bitcoin is now the second largest asset class after gold in US commodities ETF. Like, to me, reading that was just that's unbelievably big news from what I can tell. And yet we're down in the crypto market. What's going on?
Yeah, let's maybe put those numbers into perspective. If you look at all the 9 Bitcoin ETFs, they have a combined value of 28 bill. That equates almost 650k BTC, of which Grayscale is holding approximately 600k. If you look, as you pointed out, at the leaderboard in terms of assets under management for commodities, you see gold still in the top spot with 96 bill. And then you see silver with 11.5 bill. You see crude oil then falling off with 2.6 bill. And not only has, as you rightly pointed out, Bitcoin or the Bitcoin ETF surpassed silver, they did that massively. They're almost like at a 2.5, 2.6x of the assets under management across the ETFs. And another notable point for me was a tweet yesterday by our favorite ETF analyst, Eric Balkunas, who pointed out yesterday that the newborn 9, as he calls those ETFs, saw a 34% jump in volume yesterday versus the day before, and also provided an additional commentary saying that normally with a hyped up launch, you see volume steadily decrease each day post launch. Rare to see it reverse back up. All but one saw jump to, but GBTC changed flat, so it wasn't a volatility thing, and it's a good sign in his opinion. So that definitely also has a lot to say if we see still massive volume coming into those ETFs and still continue to raise despite the correction in the markets that we've seen for BTC and all the other cryptocurrencies. And overall, surprises me a lot to see that the sentiment on the timeline hasn't been the most positive around the ETF. Like, I do have the impression they've done incredibly well. Again, another stat that we shared is that the BTC ETFs did more in volume than all the newly launched ETFs in 2023 over the entire year. So that's also like an incredible amount of volume if you compare that to a market as mature as the ETF market. And yet the timeline seems like, meh, we expected more of that. So I don't know. I'm like very, very pleasantly surprised with how the ETFs are doing.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Like, it does feel like there's a mismatch in what's going on right now in terms of the sentiment on the timeline, which I guess is heavily affected by the price, and maybe quite disappointed that the price has gone down. But these numbers are very, very significant from what I can tell. Funky, I see you with your hand raised and reacting. Want to come to you in just a second. And we've also got Zai and Confusion on stage with us for the first time in a while. If you do have anything to contribute, guys, or you'd like to weigh in on this or any of the NFT market stuff in a second, just raise your hand and I'll get round to you in a little bit. Funky, what are your thoughts on the significance of Bitcoin surpassing silver to claim second spot?
Absolutely massive, GM fam. I think that this is huge news. It's just there's a disconnect between those of us who are Web3 natives versus those in the TradFi world. All these inflows are just super, super, super bullish long term, not financial advice and all. But I think at the end of the day, people who are on our timelines, they just were expecting God candles to just smash through 50K and everything else. It just doesn't work this way, right? I mean, these inflows are largely happening probably via OTC desks. They're not just like, no one's just smash buying at Goldman Sachs. Like, oh, hey, let's, like you can imagine them hitting it like the pump GIF where people are like looking at the TV. It's not happening that way. But I think the inflows are a great sign. I mean, the fact that it surpassed silver this quickly is insane.
Yeah.
And I think people need to wrap their heads around this because long term, it's all good. Now, when you look, and I'm not a TA guy, but when you look at it, we're really overbought. Things were really hot. I expect it to trundle sideways or maybe even have a significant dip, right? And psychologically, people panic in Web3. But nobody would wearing a suit, on a trading desk is sweating this at all. This is a 10-year vision, right? I mean, this is about 2030 and beyond. So I think this is extremely bullish long term, and it's incredible, absolutely incredible that we're already here.
Absolutely. Like I think that there's a lot of wisdom in that. I think there just seems to be a very, very clear discrepancy between the kind of facts on the ground versus the sentiment and timeline now that the price has gone down. And as you say, it could go down more. Could go down more. I remember we looked at a chart on the show a few months, might have been months or weeks ago, trying to compare what happened when gold had its ETF moment. And my understanding was, like things, as you say, they don't just explode up. Like at that exact moment, they don't just explode up. They kind of settle for a while. They may even go down a touch. And then, the ETF is there now. So you expect inflows to keep coming in over time. So that is probably a useful chart to look at if you are interested in like checking how gold performed. Probably reasonable to kind of check that out to try to compare it with Bitcoin.
I think Funky pointed out the reason behind it perfectly. Just that Web3 native set of expectations that got projected on the TradFi world. Because like maybe you look at something as the crypto undead's mint, as you said perfectly. 24 Sol offers before it was able to purchase 14, 15 Sol, dumping slowly, then rallying up before the reveal. Reveal is not sending it straight to 30 Sol. Let's fucking dump it by almost 50%. And I feel like this set of expectations is very representative for how we approach things in Web3, and certainly does not work out in the TradFi world. So I think that was a very, very good point by Funky.
Makes a lot of sense. We've got Elite Artist on YouTube saying the crypto boys expected it to go up like a shitcoin, but they found out. Lol. Yeah, I think that's fair. Also, this big point about the GBTC selling, but overall the inflow is great long term. Expecting that total BTC and ETFs to rise continuously. Yes, the GBTC selling has been significant and definitely a factor. So, worth bearing that in mind. Legendary just mentioned crypto undeads. Jack, you mentioned crypto undeads as well. We're desperate to talk about crypto undeads. That's my assessment of the situation. Let's get into it. Legendary, do you want to set up the crypto undeads news? What happened? What happened to the floor price on reveal? And then we'll get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw the reveal happening yesterday evening at least for my time. And as you pointed out, the reviews were pretty mixed on the timeline. The floor price did suffer a 37% decrease, is now sitting at a 7.2 Solana floor price. Interesting thing to point out, though, if you look at the situation around the offers, there are offers significantly above floor, especially for the legendary ones. The legendary ones are one of ones, as they should be. And there is a standing offer for 104 Sol for any of the legendary ones, and the floor one is listed at 150. So there's definitely a lot of trading also happening above the floor. Dollar, the founder, pointed out that I think Sunday is the day to settle if you want to have a crypto undead, to have it by then, because then there's a snapshot happening, and whatever happens after that, whether it's an airdrop, additional mints, etc., will be based on that snapshot. And another side discussion, something that Crypto Conan also pointed out on the timeline, evolved around the artist who might be behind crypto undeads. And Crypto Conan perfectly pointed out that it looks very, very similar to the Lotus Gang by Bungie. And Bungie then also made a post on that saying, and I'm quoting, "No, I didn't do the crypto undeads art, but I did review and give creative advice / direction, including some of my signature tricks. I think it fucking bangs, but I'm obviously biased, laughing my ass off." And I do think that if you've worded like that, there's some signature tricks of his. And if you take a look at the Lotus Gang and at crypto undeads, basically crypto undeads, in my opinion, look like the undead version of Lotus Gang, which is, well, it's not a good or a bad thing, but it just to me
just is.
speaks that Bungie had a lot of input into the visual direction of the collection if he didn't, or at least did a part of the art, if not almost all of it.
Okay. Interesting. Thanks so much for that summary. Very helpful in terms of the price action, what's happening. Interesting to know there's a snapshot coming already, like trying to create some type of anticipation. I wasn't aware of that. First question on the art, given that we're doing, it's one of the first, I saw a tweet from someone yesterday saying, we're so back when the timeline is actually talking about the art. Like people seem, at least on the timeline, to actually care. They want to get into it. They want to hate it. They want to love it. Like at least there's an opinion on it. So let's get your opinions first. And then I want to ask a question about this artist thing. For the people on YouTube, you can see we're scrolling through some of the reveals. For the people who are listening in, how would we describe this? Kind of pixel art, fairly undead pixel art is I guess the extent to which I would be able to describe it. Legendary, first thoughts on the art, then Jack.
I think it's decent. It's not the best pixel art that I've ever seen. I think it's decent. If I were to criticize one thing in particular, is that there seems to only be one single background color. Now, I do understand that the color that they went with is the brand color, and it is all a branding playbook, but I would at least have appreciated a couple of shades of that blue-gray-ish background and not only one color. But it's not my favorite pixel art. If I had to pick my favorite pixel art for a PFP collection, that still would be Moonbirds, just judging by the art. But it's not bad by any means. It's okay to good.
Okay. That's fine. I saw a real mixed set of opinions on the timeline. Some people saying they like it, some people saying they love it, some people say they hate it. Very interesting stuff. Confusion, I see with your hand raised. We're going to come to you in just a second. Jack, first, what do you think about the art? And second, is it an issue at all, in your opinion, that there was the artist who did it has their own collection and it kind of looks the same, but it's just an undead version of it? Like, is that a problem? Is it not a problem? What do you think?
Yeah, first to the art, like I don't mind it. It's exactly reflective of what the market reacted to. It wasn't like a full, oh, this is a rug, but it also wasn't, oh, this is innovative, this is something groundbreaking, this is something that we haven't seen on Sol before. I like it. Like I could see myself collecting a few of these. I do like the traits. I think it shows a real understanding of the space. Like it's not too many traits. It's not too busy. It's definitely usable as a PFP. I agree with Legendary on the background. I think obviously the founder did come on the show a couple of days ago at midday and talked about like how big branding is. So I can see why he's like really, really stuck to this one thing. He wants to make sure that the background is a part of this. Same with BTCD Gods, it's all about the orange background. It's like one of the only distinguishers, and it's a big, big deal. To the artist side, yes, like if for people who are listening, it's the shape of the face. It's so angular, and it just it looks like a carbon copy of this artist. Like I think the artist came out to say that he had input. It looks almost like he had a lot of it. Yeah,
I appreciate that.
I'm not a fan of it.
Is it a problem? Does it matter?
To me, I would reference gaming when it's reskinned. And I think to a point, like if you're going out as a project where you're like, I want to put myself above any other project, I want to take myself out of the running for just an other launch, I really want to distinguish myself as a collection that's going to be in the blue chip arena. It's going to be competitive. I don't think you can reskin. And if that's what's happened, then I do think that's a problem, because it just speaks to time and it speaks to speed of launch. And that's a concern to me, is like, okay, they clearly have noticed the market is up. We've only just hit that narrative. They found an opportunity to take advantage of that. And then if they have reskinned the collection, I'm not saying that's what they have done, but if that is the case, and it is just like, how quickly can we get this artwork out? I don't think that that is the sort of project in this next cycle that I'll be looking to. I look for teams and I look for people who've been building during the bear and been thinking long term. This doesn't scream to me that they've been thinking long term. This screams to me as someone who wanted to take advantage of a market that is currently on the up.
Interesting take. I mean, I wonder whether it reminds me just briefly of the Manchester United drop, which was criticized for being very similar to the Lucrece art. Lucrece kind of got this devilish look and vibe, and obviously Man United are the Red Devils. And that was heavily criticized because it was like, well, you've used a similar vibe, a similar style, but you didn't ask the artist. And so I don't know, my instinct, and I haven't thought about this too deeply, is that if you don't ask the artist, can you copy their style? That's like definitely very, very bad. If you are bringing the artist in to work with you and do the art, then I don't know what we can expect. That the art is like similar to their other art. Like it's clearly it was their intention to bring in this type of style. So I think that might be where we've come with it. I know we've got some more strong takes on this to come. Confusion, your hand is raised. Kusho as well. I want to get to you in just a second. But before we do that, I want to bring one up to speed with the rest from the as always. But my computer is being very, very slow. So why don't we go to Confusion first? Confusion, what are your thoughts on the reveal? And actually, maybe let's move it into the price action. Why do you think we've gone down so hard?
Hey, so in terms of the reveal, I think because they never showed any sneak peeks, it's just impossible to live up to the hype. So, like, I think if you had the pre-sale, the play definitely was to, and you've been in the market quite a while, the play definitely was to, sell before the reveal. But with that said, I think like Jack was saying, I think they do have quite a nice number of traits. It kind of reminds me of Nakamigos. When Nakamigos revealed, they had so many different cool traits. I found myself scrolling through and looking at all the different traits, and I was actually doing the same here. So I was just curious, and I don't have one of these, but I was just looking, and like, for example, the squiggles trait is nice, and the shark onesie is pretty cool. So I think they do have like a nice number of traits. But one thing that someone said on the timeline, and I can't unsee it now, is that someone said they look like derivatives of dollars PFP, and now I'm just seeing that. but to be fair, I think the art is not bad. It's not bad for the collection. And yeah, in terms of price action, yeah, I think that's just what it is. I think it was just so overhyped that you can never live up to the reveal. But it is interesting that, like Legendary was saying, the kind of more the mythical or legendary traits have 100 soul plus bids. So that's quite promising, and you never know, right? It could, as more kind of rarer traits get bought up, maybe the kind of floor starts moving up as well. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, interesting perspective. I kind of agree with you. One of the questions that I'm thinking with the variety of take, I find it really interesting that there's such a split. And I wonder, Confusion, just a follow-up question, do you think it's bullish or bearish that there is such a split? Like, it seems like some people really dislike it. We have Curtis in the comments saying, I like the art personally. I don't know if that's because he shared a photo of one of his crypto undeads. Is it the case that people like it if they hold one? What's your view there?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing that there's a divide, because if your project has, like, if no one's talking about your project, then there's no kind of marketing going on. No one really knows about it. So even though there is a lot of FUD and there's a lot of, I guess if you do hold one, you tend to would have a kind of bag bias, I guess. So I think it's good. Like, I think no project ever can get everything right. And what surprised me about this project is there's been so many hyped projects, but this one in particular has had so much FUD, and I don't really understand why. I guess they're not. I don't know.
Mm.
It's a funny one because I guess they weren't really promising a lot, is my understanding.
Yeah.
Just the art, right? Although I did see they've hired like a head of tokenomics or something, but I guess in terms of the mint, they weren't really promising a lot, and yeah, so I don't know. It's a funny one. I think I think it's pretty cool that they worked with the artists
Yeah.
to
Agree.
to make to make these
Mm.
and yeah, I guess yeah, as I was saying initially, I think I don't know. I think the wide variety of traits and the fact that people are fudding it or talking highly of it, like it's kind of a split, is probably a good thing.
Yeah,
To be fair,
I think that makes sense. I think that makes sense. It's definitely split the timeline, and I agree with you in the sense that it kind of had an excess amount of criticism at the before, maybe some justified, but it definitely managed to capture the attention. So I agree with that. Legendary, any final reflections on this? I don't know whether we want to keep going on this or touch on the Bitcoin sellout. To be honest, I don't have a huge amount to say on the Bitcoin sellout. We could talk about it longer, but there seems to be a bunch of promising or just a lot of successful mints taking place on Bitcoin. The Pizza Ninjas sold out at 0.03. Thank you X also had an art drop on Bitcoin yesterday, sold out 100 pieces at about 0.04, I think. So a lot of good things happening on ordinals still. As we draw towards the close of the show, what are your kind of reflections on crypto undeads? I know you're still a holder, actually. So
Yeah, I've still been holding mine. Like I was thinking, obviously, about, as Confusion pointed out, selling before they revealed and buying back in. But like just from a tax perspective, that doesn't really make sense to me. It's like it's still NFTs are still 50% income tax, so I wouldn't achieve anything by that essentially. But if you're not in the tax situation, obviously that move would have made sense. But I really like the point that Jack made in terms of if it were a reskin, that is problematic for a brand that tries to be first and foremost a brand and following a branding playbook. And it's not really starting off from a unique position, from like a unique standpoint. And that makes it would make it very different. Like if you have a collection that would be very similar in terms of look and feel to say Azuki, and then their main value prop is to be a brand, but they just look like Azukis but undead, that's difficult to build around that.
yeah, I can see why people might consider that to be an issue. Okay, I think Jack, any final thoughts as we draw to a conclusion here? Where do you see crypto undeads moving forward? Are you excited about this snapshot potentially?
It reminds me a bit of Moonbirds, like like when they first talked about their staking and the fact that they were going to nest, and that obviously had a massive pump to the initial collection. I think Elite Artist even said in the comments on YouTube, like, when was the last time we saw a pump post reveal? And Moonbirds is the last one I can think of, which there must be ones since then, but I was involved in that, and that literally just shot to 40 ETH based on the artwork, based on the project, based on talent. So I think there's a little bit of a similar narrative. I think just plucking things from different projects that have been successful and incorporating them into the project, which isn't a bad thing. It shows understanding of the space and time spent in the space. Overall, I think these are going sub 5 sol in the next week or so. I would be very surprised if they don't go sub 5. At that point, I think it all comes down to what the team have up their sleeve. I don't think this is like a definite like rug. I don't think this is definite like counting this team out at this point. I think there's some negatives, there's some real positives. I love that the founder can speak on spaces eloquently. I think that's a huge plus. Like, we do not pay enough attention to that ability, but I do think it is now dependent on their execution, and we haven't seen anything from them so far that dictates that that's going to be like premium based on what we've seen so far. So I'd be hesitant to pick one of these up right now from my own bag perspective.
Fair enough. A little bit of caution never hurts in this market, potentially. But guys, that has been a fantastic show. Jack, thank you so much for joining us as our special guest commentator today. If people want to hear some of your spicier takes on the timeline, what is the best place to find you?
Definitely just on Twitter. I don't really spend much time outside of on this show. Modern Market, I'm here most days giving my opinion. Love these guys, love what they're doing with the show. I think it's definitely the place to get your like espresso shot of information on like what is coming throughout the day. And I think it speaks volumes that we see a lot of other Spaces hosts in here getting that same perspective. So love you guys. Coffee with Captain as well. Great show. You find me on that sometimes afterwards. Otherwise, yeah, on Twitter, just posting on JackGK_ETH.
There we go. Very, very happy to have had you. Definitely give Jack a follow. And we will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much, Legendary, for co-hosting. Thank you, Jack, for joining us. Thank you to Zai, Confusion, Funky, and Kusho up on stage with us. Thank you to the rest of you in the audience. We will see you again on Monday. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.